You know that feeling when you first try something new? It's clunky, you're overthinking every single step, and it just feels hard. But then, after a while, you can do it without even thinking. So how does that happen? Well, we're going to dive into a really cool cognitive theory that explains all of it. The attention processing model.
I mean, this is a question for pretty much everything we learn, right? Driving a car, learning to cook, maybe speaking a new language. You go from this super clumsy, slow phase, and then, almost like magic, one day it just clicks. It becomes second nature. How does our brain pull off that incredible trick?
Well, that whole journey from clumsy to automatic, it really starts with understanding that our brain has two completely different gears for processing information.
Okay, so this slide breaks it down perfectly. When you're learning something new, you're over here in what's called controlled processing. This is your brain in first gear. It's slow, it takes a ton of effort, and you can only handle a few things at once. But the goal with any skill is to shift all the way over here to automatic processing. Now you're in fifth gear. It's fast, it's effortless, and it frees up so much mental space. So at its core, learning is really just the journey of moving a skill from the left side of this chart to the right.
To really get what controlled processing feels like, let's use an example. Imagine you're on a tennis court for the very first time. You got a racket in your hand, and your brain is just going a mile a minute. As a total beginner, your brain's entire capacity is just completely maxed out. You're focusing on these three simple things, and that's it. Make contact, get it over the net, try to keep it in the lines. You're not thinking about strategy or where to place the ball. You're just thinking, please just let me hit the ball. That right there, that's controlled processing.
Now, let's flip it. Think about a pro tennis player. For them, hitting the ball is completely automatic. It's like breathing. And because that basic skill is automated, their brain is free to process a whole flood of other information at the same time. Where their opponent is, their own court position, strategy for the point, which shot to use. It's an incredible amount of data. That's the power of automatic processing.
But you know, which processing mode you're in is only half the story. The other critical piece of this puzzle is where you're actually aiming your attention. And just like processing, this isn't an on or off switch. And this is a really important point to clear up. A lot of people think this is about conscious versus unconscious thought, but that's not really accurate. Both types of attention are part of your conscious awareness. The real difference is whether your attention is laser focused on one thing or if it's spread out to the things around it. Driving is probably the best way to think about this. Your focal attention, your spotlight, is on the car right in front of you. You're tracking its speed, its brake lights, but at the same time, you're still aware of everything else, right? The cars in the other lanes, the stoplight up ahead, that's your peripheral attention. Both are conscious, both are active, but they're doing different jobs. Okay, so here's where it all comes together. When you combine those two ideas, processing and attention, you get this amazing 4-quadrant grid that basically explains every state of learning. For example, you can have controlled, effortful thinking that's either super focused, like when you're memorizing a grammar rule, or more peripheral, kind of like how a toddler just soaks up language from their environment. And then you can have automatic, effortless skill that's either focal, like an expert driver focused intensely on a foggy road, or peripheral, like that same driver just cruising on a sunny day.
So let's apply this whole model to something really complex, like learning a new language. How does this map out that journey from being a total beginner to being fluent?
Think about it. For a brand new learner, even a simple greeting is a huge mental effort. They're in total controlled processing mode. They're literally pulling each word out one by one, good, morning, and trying to string them together. Their short-term memory is working overtime just to build that one little phrase. So the path to fluency is actually a pretty clear 3-step process. You start in that slow, controlled mode. But then, with practice, by saying that phrase over and over, you start to move it from your fragile short-term memory into your permanent long-term memory. And eventually, good morning, how are you, stops being 5 separate words. It becomes one single automatic chunk that you can just fire off without even thinking about it. And this right here, this is the absolute magic of learning. Every single time you push a skill into that automatic zone, you free up all that limited brain power. That mental energy is now available for the next challenge, whether that's learning a new tense or trying to understand a super fast native speaker. It's how we build complex skills, one automatic layer at a time. But let's be real, this whole process isn't always a straight, easy line. This constant shifting between controlled and automatic can lead to some really weird and honestly frustrating quirks in how we learn. One of the big ones is something called restructuring. See, as your brain takes in new information, it's constantly shuffling everything around, trying to make a better, more organized system. Now, that's a good thing, but in the short term, it can mean you suddenly start making mistakes on stuff you thought you had already mastered. So here's a perfect example of what that looks like. Maybe you first learn the phrase, "Have you got a pet?" just as a memorized chunk. It works, you say it automatically, but later you start to learn the actual rules for making questions. So your brain tries to apply this new rule, and all of a sudden, you might say something wrong, like, "You have pet?" It feels like you're going backwards, but it's actually a sign your brain is learning on a much deeper level. Now, here's where things can get dangerous. This is called fossilization, and it's what happens when you practice something the wrong way so many times that the mistake itself becomes automatic. You've made an error a permanent locked-in habit. And this is exactly why getting feedback early on is so important. You've got to catch those mistakes before they fossilize. And what makes these fossilized errors so hard to fix? Well, it's because once that bad habit goes automatic, it's no longer under your direct, controlled attention. Trying to fix it is like consciously trying to change the rhythm of your own heartbeat. It's just become part of your system's default programming. It runs on its own. So when you pull it all together, this model is a really powerful way to think about your own learning. So I'll leave you with this question. What's one skill in your life right now that's stuck in that slow, effortful, controlled phase that you really want to push over into that fast, effortless, automatic state? Because understanding how the process works, well, that's the first step to making it happen.
So, if you like videos like this, make sure you subscribe to our channel, hit the bell icon to get notified every time we post a new video, and share this video with your classmates, teachers, and friends. Thank you all for your input. Let's keep this process efficient and on track.